seconds will just be us trying to figure it out and sharing it, and that's totally fine. So yeah, so apparently we actually are live. So if you head over to Twitter, we should see it in my page. So I'll share that over with you. Yeah, we are live.
All right, let me look you up over here. I can share it.
Yeah. We are live with.
Cool. I see it. Let me like that. Sure. Oh, I see it. That's cool. A new experience for me.
Yeah, totally. It's pretty sweet. It's like it does everything on its own.
This is live tweeting, which I am making some spelling errors here.
Yeah. All right, we have 3 viewers. Thank you all guys for already being here with us. We are just getting started with John from Mi Primer Bitcoin, and yeah, when you're ready, we'll just get going.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
All right, so how's it going, man?
It's going great. It's a wonderfully cloudy morning in San Salvador.
Yeah, well, at least you have a T-shirt. I am here with a sweater in England. It's still pretty chilly around here.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, so it's good to meet you. Meet you again after meeting you in real life in San Salvador, which was an incredible experience. So why don't we get started? And I think people are often very curious to hear about the background of the creators of these great initiatives and companies such as yourself. So yeah, do you want to tell us a bit about, maybe just really quickly, like what is Mi Primer Bitcoin, and then we can deep dive into your background.
Mm-hmm.
And what also brought you to Bitcoin? I'm also looking at the tweet and seeing if there's any people asking questions.
Cool. Thank you for that. Thank you for having me on today. Great to connect with you again. I know we've chatted before, and I am a big fan of Geyser Fund. I think it's a really important tool for the community, right? Bitcoin is about empowerment, and that manifests itself in a variety of ways, but that also, one of the ways that it manifests itself is to give people more freedom in what they do with their money and what they contribute to and all that, and just make it easier to do that. So I'm a big fan.
Awesome.
Let me just close out my WhatsApp here. I see that it's beeping, and I don't want to disturb that. I don't want that to disturb us. So great morning here. My name is John. I'm the founder of Mi Primer Bitcoin, or My First Bitcoin in English. We are a Bitcoin nonprofit. The focus is El Salvador, but the mission is the world. We really believe that we are at a crossroads, that humanity has a couple of different paths in front of them. And right here, right now is really important because what is happening in El Salvador as the first nation to adopt Bitcoin will echo around the world. So it has to be successful, and it has to be done right. So we're really interested in helping push that success forward, specifically with independent, impartial, community-led education. And I apologize. I think I kind of went a little bit off track. Your question there. Sorry.
No, there's no off track. This is really it. No, this is beautiful.
Do a couple of things on my computer, and I'm a terrible multitasker. So maybe
Same here. No, it's super interesting to actually. I already sparked some thought in my head. Basically, the idea that you're taking this as an opportunity. El Salvador was an opportunity that that we need to work for, right? It's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be a smooth ride. And you guys, are, that seems to be the mission, right? Is making this a successful experiment.
Yeah. Making this something that could be replicated too. That's something that we look at more recently with Me From Our Bitcoin. How can we encourage others to start their own Bitcoin education projects around the world? And it's the same concept, right? El Salvador is the first of many, right? The first of everywhere.
Right. Absolutely. Right. So what got you in this journey? Maybe the Bitcoin origin story is always an interesting one to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just last week or so, I celebrated a decade in Bitcoin. So it was in early April 2013. I saw an article about Cyprus. I don't know if you remember that. That was a really interesting moment for me. So in 2013, Cyprus, a country in Europe, had some financial difficulties, and the government's solution to that was a quote unquote bank bail-in, where they took money from people's bank accounts to help fix the government's problem, the government's financial shortfall. And I had never heard of Bitcoin. I previous to this, I was a journalist and interested in international politics. So like financial crisis in Cyprus, that was on my radar, and I read an article about it, and there was a line, just a throwaway line, like Bitcoin users unaffected, and I was like, what users?
Wow.
So I looked into it, and I was like, huh. That is something that can change the world, right? Like what better example than a government, a state, a large entity, literally taken from the people that it's supposed to serve because of a problem they had.
Right.
And there was one alternative to that already existed in 2013. It was already there. It already served that purpose. Maybe just for a handful of people, right? But it was, for me, it was like a watershed moment. It was like, wow, this is a really powerful tool that will have.
There was a way out, right? There was a way
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Were you already involved in the like Occupy kind of movements back in the 2008, 2009? Because that was quite important as well, probably for Bitcoin as well, right?
Yes. I'm from New York originally, and I was living in New York in 2011 when Occupy Wall Street started, and I participated in that. I guess I could say whatever I want now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I
Wear it with pride, right?
Yeah. I was there on the first day. I got arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge. I got arrested a couple of times. I slept in the park. I was quite involved with that in the early stages. Later, it was a beautiful movement. The first few weeks were really, really beautiful. We had a camp literally blocks from Wall Street. And for me, it was a really powerful symbol because in the camp, the value system was different. Wall Street represents greed. It represents, control. It represents like people having control over others and a very different culture, which I disagreed with. And within the camp, then it ran on altruism and hope and this totally different system that existed in the shadow of Wall Street. It pretty quickly descended into other things that I was less happy about, but that the genesis of it was actually something really special to witness. And I wish that I knew about Bitcoin then. And it surprises me actually because Occupy Wall Street is, more like from the left. It's a political movement more from the
Mhm.
left. At the same time, I guess around that time in the U.S., the political movement on the right would have been like the Tea Party movement. And I was attracted to Occupy for the same reasons that I was attracted to Bitcoin, right? I see it as a check on the excesses of power. And I also don't care about right or left. Like, I think that's a false dichotomy. That's meant to divide us, right? That's Bitcoin is for everyone, and that's one of the things that I love about Bitcoin is it could unite us. But yeah, I'm surprised. People that I made contact with in Occupy, many of them, a couple of them like Bitcoin, but many of them like really dislike it, like irrationally. And it doesn't make sense to me, because Occupy for me was about liberation. It was about empowerment. And now we have a tool to do that.
Right.
So
Yeah. It's almost as if Occupy had identified that there was indeed a major issue with the world, right? That there is way too much imbalance of power, that some powers are left unchecked, and that there is a sort of complicit connection between like the government and these major private entities. But I think there's a lot of confusion still about like what the system we're living in. I think a lot of people still think that we live in capitalism, but it's a very particular, like particularly bad type of capitalism that is often referred to as crony capitalism. It's sort of these major entities, private entities, kind of that have usurped the government. But I see what you mean. I think if you're coming from the right, the way to see Bitcoin is like Bitcoin is the money, the private sector money, or like money that is not corrupted by the state. But if you're coming from the left, you have the way to see Bitcoin is more, it's the money of the people, right? It's more like a public good rather than a good that is reserved by these major private entities that actually own money. Even the Fed is a private institution, right? So
yeah, and I think Occupy correctly identified that there was a major problem.
right.
It didn't really have a solution, and one of the things that I loved about Occupy, like the mentality was like, there's a problem, let's throw our bodies on the mechanisms of this machine, right? Which is like there's a certain passion and enthusiasm about that, but that was just, we have a problem, we have to stop the problem. Like, yes, step one completed. Step two, solutions. And that's what Bitcoin is, right? Bitcoin is the solution. Bitcoin is hope. Bitcoin is an alternative. It's something better. It's something that could replace this. So I think Occupy was really great at diagnosing the problem, but not really great at finding the solution.
That's right. Occupy it was right after the crisis. It was 2009. So Bitcoin might have just been started, and while people were protesting outside, Satoshi was writing code and solving a problem that the people that didn't quite realize it was deeper than we imagined.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting to think back to the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. Like, that still echoes today, right? That was earth shattering what happened there. Because it launched so many things. Like, I think it really, in a way, it's kind of the birth of the modern, a variety of modern political movements. So Bitcoin obviously is one of them, but also on both the right and left. And again, I want to restate that I think that is a false dichotomy, and we should not divide ourselves in those two camps and think of the other as the enemy. But Occupy ultimately failed in its objectives, but I think it influences a school of thought on that side of the political spectrum very much today, with this like takeover sort of thing, like Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, like all that. Like, the genesis is really the mentality that was born from Occupy Wall Street. And on the right, I think Tea Party, which was launched kind of created in the wake of the financial crisis, also is kind of like the forefather of a lot of modern thought on that side of the spectrum. And then we have, and to be honest, I think they're I disagree with both of them because they're more like, the solution is to build, and the solution isn't to push against something. It's to create something better to make what you oppose irrelevant. And
Absolutely.
that's where Bitcoin nailed it, right? Bitcoin isn't trying to tear down the banks. They're not trying to burn them down.
They're not even trying to change the system from within, right? They're not even
No.
trying to.
Bitcoin is just something that's better. And if you could create something that's better, then you don't have to fight against that old thing. It becomes irrelevant then. And that's the real way that we're going to win. And I think of the three things that emerged, Bitcoin is the one that got it, right? Bitcoin is the one that is really going to create a world in which what happened then can never happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. I totally agree with that. And just about the two-party thing, I forget who said it recently. It might have been Balaji, who's can be criticized for many reasons, but he just said something interesting, that it's not about left or right. It's about green versus orange, right? That green represents fiat, fiat money, potentially ESG. I guess you could think about that as well, although not necessarily. But then whereas orange is obviously Bitcoin. So green versus orange is an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's bring it forward a few years and tell us a bit about like how the idea of Mi Primer Bitcoin came up in the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I had been interested in Bitcoin for quite some time as an agent for change. I was very excited in the beginning. Like in 2013, I did some things. I exploited some arbitrage. I was living in England at the time. And I was able to exploit some arbitrage, but I sold to the wrong person and got into some trouble there, which made me take a step back for quite a long time. And it was really the pandemic that, I had been obsessed with Bitcoin, honestly, ever since the first day that I heard of it. But I wasn't actively and publicly working toward a Bitcoin world, more than just like ranting to friends and family about it.
Yeah. Stop it with this Bitcoin stuff.
But
what you talk about.
Yeah, the pandemic was it demonstrated to me that the world was broken and that it would never fix itself. That it was on a path that was never going to self-correct. And that's a pretty depressing thought, to be honest, to be like, you know what, the world is headed to a bad place. And it is set on that path. Like it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And then what gave me hope, and this happened during the pandemic for two reasons. One, because I think the faults of the status quo of the current system under which we live were exposed more than ever in a variety of different ways. So that was one catalyst. Another catalyst was, I lost a lot of. I was doing like editorial and journalism work, some freelance, some regular, but I lost a lot of work. I had more time to ponder.
And is this still when you were in England, or you were back in the States?
No, so when the pandemic started, I was in New York.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time walking around the city, walking around parks, woods, just walking around and thinking about what was wrong with the world. And like I was saying before, it's step one is to identify the problem. Step two is to find solutions. So there is a problem. There is a massive problem with the world. And what is the problem? I think one of the major problems that we have is that we don't have agency in our own lives. We don't have sovereignty in our own lives, right? And that has a lot of negative knock-on effects. It changes our mental state. It changes it makes us subservient to a system that doesn't serve us, right? Rather than being empowered in our own lives, rather than trying to create something for the future, we settle for what's given to us in the present, right? Because we've been trained not to have that mentality of that we could build something for the future, right? So we don't view ourselves as having that power, as having that agency and sovereignty to do that. So the solution is Bitcoin. Bitcoin gives us all of that. It gives us power in our money. Obviously, we can't have a country that has a bail-in and takes our money. But it also has knock-on effects as well. Like, it gives us power in our own lives. It gives us agency in our own lives. Like, it's not money. Money is synonymous with power. So who controls the money controls the power. And with Bitcoin, that's you, right?
That's super interesting as well. It made me think about something, right? Which is that it's not who has money, it's who controls money, right? Because you could have all the Bitcoin in the world, but you're still not going to control Bitcoin.
Yes. Yeah. If you have all the dollars in the world, you have a lot of influence over dollars, right?
Yeah.
But with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you have, it treats you the same, right? There's no, you still can't rewrite the rules to take my Bitcoin.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
So yeah, just during the pandemic, I saw the solution was Bitcoin, and also I spent a lot of my adult life in Latin America, mostly in Ecuador. And I had the thought that, well, I've always seen Bitcoin as a social movement. And one of the reasons why I've always been attracted to Latin America is because they have such powerful social movements. I always found it very inspiring that when I'd like to flip how people view Latin America. A lot of people, at least in the US, view Latin America as having weak governments. I do not think that's true. I do not think that governments get overthrown in Latin America with more frequency than they do in the United States because governments are weak. I think that happens because people are strong, right? When social movements in many countries in Latin America effectively act as a check on government corruption. Governments are corrupt here. Governments are corrupt everywhere, though. That is not a regional phenomenon. That is a phenomenon of power, right? Because power corrupts. Politicians and the system is corrupt in the US as well, but the people don't have the capability to
fight back
people when that happens. They do here. So
what do you think that is, by the way? What do you think that is? What do you think in the States? Because at least in the States, you actually even have, it's a gunned country. So in theory, it would be a lot more able to push back against government power. Is it just complacency, maybe, or are there?
I think there's a few reasons. One is, I think that the size of the country has a role. It's the powerful there are very powerful, and there's a certain momentum to that size. But also an interesting thing about, and it's interesting that you bring up guns, because I think that the power dynamics in Latin America are a lot more naked than in the US. In the US, it's a lot more complex. Excuse me. So with protests in the US, then there's it is not often that the police will use physical force to suppress dissent. Occasionally they do, but that is definitely not the primary tactic. The primary tactic there, it's very easy to get arrested at protests in the U.S. Like when I was in university, I went to a lot of protests and I got arrested all the time.
Wow.
I got arrested like 15 or 16 times in the U.S. in a span of a few years just because I was active at protests. I was active at protests that weren't permitted, right? Like in the
Okay.
U.S., you need to ask permission. You need to, which is a crazy concept to me. You need to ask permission to disagree with.
Right. Interesting.
You need to ask permission of the people you disagree with if you could disagree with them publicly, which is like,
Wow. Wow. Well, I was not aware of that. That's crazy.
yeah. So you have to ask for a permit to protest.
Right.
Otherwise, it's illegal, right? And
Mm.
just participating in it is illegal then at that point. So I
Right.
was always attracted and I always gravitated to and sometimes organized protests that did not ask permission to express dissent, which meant that they were illegal by default. And it was, very often it was
Yeah.
easy to get arrested if you're
Mhm.
just like in that environment. Um, and that it's a psychological thing, right? Like people don't want to get arrested. No one wants to get arrested. That is not a fun thing, right?
Mhm.
Even though it's this, the charges will be dropped and it's really just it's really an annoyance more than anything
Mm.
else. You have to go to court, you have to take off work. Like
It's a cost, right? It's a cost applied to you on not the physical level. It's a physical cost with physical threats, but also potential employment opportunities and all sorts
yeah,
of other.
yeah, yeah. And it's fear, right? So in reality, you probably, for what I'm talking about, for just going to a protest, not doing anything more than that, but just like it will be a very minor charge like disorderly conduct, which doesn't really mean anything. And they'll give you an ACD, acquittal, and contemplation of dismissal. Basically nothing will happen. But there's a psychological factor. People are afraid to go to protests in the U.S. because they associate that with the possibility of being arrested and the consequences that come with that.
Right.
So the police don't
Right.
the police don't have to hit you, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
They scare you. It's a mental thing.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas in Argentina or Latin America, if you go to a protest, then the police won't hesitate that much to use physical force. They probably won't arrest you, though. It's a different tactic that they have. The tactic
Interesting.
that they have in Latin America is very transparent, right? It's like very obvious what is happening.
So to bring it back to Occupy Wall Street, were those protests permissioned or not permitted? Because it was so big, and also the media really shone a light on the Occupy movement. It's something that today I cannot conceive of them actually shining that same light anymore.
Yeah, no, they were never permitted.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is what made it powerful, right? Like if you really want to create change, then you shouldn't be worried about making people uncomfortable that you want to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So this is an interesting tangent, but this is what then you were talking about going to South America, right? And that's
Yeah.
how you're yeah, maybe that was a lead to that.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. I don't want to talk about fundraising today.
No. That's it. This is it. This is what we're talking about. The origins, and this is fascinating.
Yeah. So yeah. So I actually I moved back to Ecuador in the tail end of the pandemic, or I don't know when to
Right.
define the range of the pandemic, but in 2021, early 2021, like at New Year's, I moved to Ecuador for a few months, and I tried to educate my friends there about Bitcoin, and I tried to empower them to do it for others. So I gave some sats to people to go and teach their neighbors and their coworkers or whatever. It didn't really get much traction. The pandemic was still kind of going on, and this was based around an in-person philosophy.
Right.
So the timing probably was not right for it. But then when El Salvador when El Salvador announced that they were adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, I believe that was April 2021. Oh, no, I'm sorry, June 2021. That was, wow, that was like, this is happening. So I pondered if maybe in September when the law came into effect in El Salvador, if maybe that was the right time, right place, because in so much of this, it's about the time and place, right?
Totally.
February 2021, Ecuador was not the right time in the right place. I wondered if September 2021 in El Salvador could be the right time in the right place. So I moved to El Salvador in August of 2021 with the intention of seeing if it would be possible to get traction with, an impartial, independent, community-led Bitcoin education initiative. And I think we have the answer to that. And we do have the answer to that for a variety of reasons, because it was the right time, it was the right place, and it's the right people, right? Like the people that have really propelled this and pushed this forward and given their energy to it. I'm just in awe of the people that do the work every day for this, and I'm just really happy to be a part of it with them.
Amazing. So I'd love to know more about, like, okay, you landed in Salvador, was it August 2021, and then what were your first steps? Like, what did you do? How did you, like, okay, Bitcoin was the solution. You went to Uruguay, then you went to Ecuador, and you're like, okay, Salvador, this might be it. And but then what were your next steps once in the country?
Well, I went to El Dante. that was
Right.
my first stop.
Right.
Check out Bitcoin Beach. So I spent a week there. That was really cool. So this was the end of August. So this was like 2 weeks before the law went into effect. Bitcoin Beach obviously already existed. Bitcoin Beach was an inspiration for the law itself. And it was a really fascinating time and place, because I wasn't the only one who went to Bitcoin Beach that week to kind of like see what was happening. I mean, I guess that's still happening, right? But I met a friend of mine. Maybe I'll listen to this later. Shout out to Jeremy, a friend of mine who I met hiking in. Oh no, I actually met him. We couch surfed at the same place in Nepal, like probably 6 years before, something like that. And we had kept in touch, and he had become a Bitcoiner, so we would like talk about Bitcoin sometimes. He was a traveler, so he was actually already there. So I met him, and then made a bunch of other friends. It was a really, really welcoming environment, because there were so many people that had arrived there that were looking for something, right? People were searching for something. They were searching for some sort of truth, some sort of way forward from what we're in. So it reminded me of like, going away to university or something like that, where everybody's kind of like feeling it out and really excited to be there. And it was an environment where everybody was really friendly. It was easy to make friends. So made some friends along with Jeremy. Talked to these people, fleshed out the idea a little bit more about Me Premier Bitcoin, which is something that I had been working on for months in my head. Like, the name had already been picked out. I'd written like a mission statement and an outline for how we could run classes, and just like some skeleton stuff. But a lot of the people that I met in those first weeks, they were like sounding boards to help flesh out ideas. And yeah, so then I moved to San Salvador, the capital, I figured that would be, Bitcoin Beach is already, they people are already using Bitcoin there. Even
Right.
at that time, people were already using Bitcoin. People were familiar with it. Once you left there, though, like once you came to San Salvador, it was
Difficult.
practically zero.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
practically no one knew anything about Bitcoin. No one knew Bitcoin. Like
yeah.
not a few people, but zero. Like almost
Yeah.
literally zero in the capital of the country that just adopted Bitcoin. Which
Yeah, it was definitely a new thing, like unexpected, and for the most of. But to be fair, having gone back, having gone there, was it last November? People now know Bitcoin, they just don't use it, right? But at least they know it.
Oh, and that's why the critique that some people have is like, oh, a minority of people are using Bitcoin in El Salvador today in 2023. Like it's less than 50%, right? I don't know what the actual number is, but yeah, clearly it's a minority, right? That's not what the majority are doing.
Yeah.
But it is also clearly not zero, and it was zero, right? So which way is it trending? And I think that's what's important. I think it's actually quite impressive, the traction that it's gotten in the short amount of time. To go from zero to say it's 10%, that's a huge shift. To go from 5 to 10 is like great, you're doubling, but 0 to 10 is a lot. So yeah, 10 is low, but it's a lot higher than zero, and it's very clear which direction that's going.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's noticeable. So right, so you started Mi Primer Bitcoin, which, by the way, I keep on thinking it should be rebranded to Mi Primer Sats, because Mi Primer Bitcoin is a high, an ambitious goal these days. But no, I'm just joking. Right, but you right. So you started, and then you, I guess, the first attempt, the first main goal must have been, or at least one of them must have been the curriculum, right? The actual textbook, which, by the way, I bought it in Spanish, and will be keeping it, as a relic from, for the future, because it's in the first Bitcoin textbook, and reading it was an absolutely cathartic experience. It was very impressive, because it was almost like going back to school and reimagining myself as a kid, learning from a textbook what is money from first principles, like what is the technology, how does it work, and why it's important. It was almost like all the memes that I had, that hadn't taught me about Bitcoin, all the books, all compressed into this sort of very digestible thing. An absolutely amazing experience. So yeah, what how did that come to place? How did that book get created?
The book, yeah.
Yeah.
So we started in 2021 just with intro classes.
Okay.
So just these one-off classes. Um, and what you're talking about is the Bitcoin diploma, which we started about a year ago. So
Right.
I think that launched in April of 2022. So that's a 10-week course, which we teach in a variety of different places. We teach in the public school system. We also teach it out of our own house. We have a house which acts as a school/office for us here in the capital, and we also teach it out of some mayor's offices in different parts of the country. So that started because we were invited to a school outside of the capital here. In the school, the director of the school was interested in Bitcoin education. So we had a meeting about that, about like how can we get Bitcoin into the school system. And we talked about it with a larger group of people, of Bitcoiners, and yeah, that ultimately led to those discussions. Ultimately led to, like, he wanted to do something in his school. They have 10-week diploma programs for different subject areas. So we created one for Bitcoin, and it was so successful that other schools. So this is a cool cool point. We've never approached a school to or a mayor's office or a community center or any place that is being taught. They've always reached out to us like, this is cool. Can you come where we are and do this? Can you come to our school and do this? So we had an opportunity, and we moved very quickly to take advantage of that opportunity and make a workbook for these students. And the time was so short. We had from the end of February, we had like a month and a half to create a 10-week course.
Wow.
And we were not experienced in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of us had any experience with that. So we created a team that was a mix of Salvadorians who had already begun to teach some intro classes. So they had some experience with talking to Salvadorians about Bitcoin, but they didn't have any, they didn't really have any teaching experience. They had pretty shallow Bitcoin knowledge. They themselves had only gotten into it in the past weeks and months. And they didn't have any experience with creating curriculum. Mm-hmm. So we paired it with some international people, primarily in the US, who had that sort of experience, that sort of profile. And they created something really great. I mean, just as an indication of how rushed everything was, we weren't ready when classes began. So we actually had to split it up. We were only ready with the first 4 or 5 weeks. So we just printed out the first 4 or 5 weeks, and we continued to work on, weeks 6 through 10 after the class had already begun. And what you have is the 3rd edition, which is the first one that we open sourced. So it's a 10-week program, and every 10 weeks we iterate on it and we try to make it better. The first one, we're really happy with the result, with how it came out. We're really happy with the results of the second one, but it was we didn't have any feedback. There's a very steep learning curve to all of this. So we made plenty of mistakes, plenty of things that needed to be improved, that could be improved, that we learned and iterated upon. So with the third one, we finally felt like, okay, this is not perfect. We're gonna keep improving this, but we could share this. We could share this. We open sourced it, and now it's freely available. We actually have the 4th edition now as well, only in English. Spanish should come out in a month or so for the next edition there.
Fantastic. I know you're at Spanish, English, and how many other languages has it been translated into?
Yeah, so we only do Spanish and English. That's what we take responsibility for. But because it is open source, and because there is demand for this sort of thing, and again, we have never reached out to others to be like, hey, could you translate this? Like, people reach out to us, which is just another indication to us that this is right time, right place, right team. Like, this is an idea whose time has come. And so now it has been translated, or is being translated, into Korean, French, Portuguese, Hungarian. It's even been translated into Esperanto.
Yes, I know, that's fantastic. I've heard good things about Esperanto, how it's connected to Bitcoin and such.
Yeah. It's actually been made into an audiobook in Esperanto.
No way.
It's like,
wow, this Esperanto community must love Bitcoin, that's for sure.
It's it makes sense. Connection. It makes sense, like borderless.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're really. And to be clear, I am not creating this curriculum, right? Like, that is not. There's a whole team. Shout out to Dahlia Platt, who's the lead curriculum developer. And she has some great people helping her as well. It's a really big effort. It's a really big effort with a lot of people contributing.
Fantastic. Well, that's very cool to see that book come to life, and so that's a really interesting. Also, kind of it really took place in such an iterative way. You sort of started just teaching, and then there's a need for a more structured approach, and you made it a structured approach, and so And then now you're teaching. Tell us a little bit about the numbers. Like how many people are you how many people are you educating around Bitcoin every month or so? And yeah, so what's your growth? What's your current growth? I remember hearing some interesting statistics about this.
Yes. We are growing faster than I might have imagined possible.
Wow.
And I'm an optimist. We had last month, March, we had more than 5,400 new intro students in El Salvador. So that's not total students that we taught last month. That's total students in person, new intro classes in El Salvador. We also have international class. We also, it's expanded internationally. That does not count diploma students. That does not count. We have some workshops on other themes. Doesn't count them. It doesn't count online classes. So the number, I mean, that most of the students are intro students, but 5,400, which is totally smashes the record. Our previous high from 2022 was 1,400. Our high from 2021 was 200. So that's the trajectory that we're on. And same with where it's being taught. Now it's being taught in, I believe we have had at least a student from every province, every department in the country. There's 14 departments, so it's pretty dispersed around the country. We actually have quite a few students in the eastern part of the country, which is, the capitals in the western part. We've actually gotten quite a bit of traction. We have a really great team and a great relationship with local government in the eastern part of the country. And it is the Bitcoin diploma just launched in Honduras, I think on Monday, in Roatan.
Right, Roatan. That's awesome.
Yeah, we had our first graduation outside of El Salvador in Guatemala earlier this month. I think in Costa Rica. I hope I'm not announcing this when it's not public, but either they just began or they're about to begin. And there's other things that I'll let them announce it, but there's different groups in a variety of different places that are imminently going to start teaching the Bitcoin diploma in their own country.
Incredible. So these are like other educational communities that are taking your curriculum, that are taking your books, and are, how do they go? Do they go through a training of sorts, or how does that work?
Yeah. So this is all very new. This is the point when I talked about the learning curve was quite steep with the workbook, and we were rushing to get something. We were happy with the product, but we knew that we could do it better, and there was feedback helped us make it better until we could really be confident enough to open source it. So we're going through a similar process now with international expansion. So the answers that I'm giving here, we will learn from, and we will do better. But yeah, the process now is that it's open source. The material is open source, and we are always striving to create new updated editions that are even better than the last one, and beyond just Bitcoin diploma, other materials that could help people. And it's open source, so anybody could do whatever they want with it, right? And there are people, I believe there are people that are doing that and are in touch with us at all, which is totally fine, and we're really happy that that's happening. But then there are people that we work a little bit closer with, and what we usually do, like what we did with the group in Honduras, is Dalia, who's I mentioned as the curriculum lead. She has been coaching their teachers there of best practices that we've learned for teaching this material. So she's been kind of walking them through how to do it, and just best practices that we found to help make sure that they have good quality with Guatemala, which I also mentioned. So that's Lago Bitcoin. We actually sent a teacher there. So we sent a Salvadorian teacher. Her name is Reina. She's done a great job there to teach the next class of the Bitcoin diploma there in a school there. So and that's not. We're still learning. We're iterating on the process. We're trying to make it more scalable. We can't, ideally in the future, these people that are teaching it in different places, whether it's Honduras or Costa Rica or wherever, that they are training the next people, right? Then when
it's a sort of train the trainers, right?
Which at the moment there's not a ton of people that have experience with this,
right?
But the people that are being trained now in the next round, they could train the next generation, right? So it's the idea is to really expand that circle.
That's really, really interesting. Yeah, you could start seeing how in the very beginning, it's okay if you're going from like 20 teachers to like, if you have, you can start seeing how it's an exponential, right? Because you've got, 3 people teaching other teachers. Like you could actually teaching, people that don't know much, right? But then some of these people could become teachers themselves, and so that sort of multiplies incredibly fast. So what are your projections then going forward, and what are your plans? If you can really, I know we don't have too much more time, so I'm curious to get to the future.
Yes.
Of Primer Bitcoin.
Yes. So we had 400 students in 2021 and 10,000 in 2022. So that's 25x growth year over year, and that we want to continue that. So this year, 2023, we will impact 250,000 students, and I believe we are well on our way. And that in that number, I'm including all students, right? That's not just intro students in person in El Salvador. That would include the students in Honduras, even though that's like their own group doing that, and Guatemala, I'm including them in these numbers. And then if we keep on that path, so next year, 2024, that's 6 million. And that's the whole population of El Salvador. We're going to continue to really grow in El Salvador, but also we want to continue to grow internationally. And I think it's important to say that when I say we, I do not necessarily mean Mi Primer Bitcoin El Salvador, because we want this to grow globally, but we want it to be decentralized. And we want to help wherever we can to propel that forward, but it's also really important that it's community led, right? Like we're not trying to dictate how people teach in Zimbabwe or Ghana or whatever, right? They're going to find what works best for them. We're going to do our best to make it a little bit easier for them to take that first step. But yeah, it's important to distinguish that we do not want, nor do we think that it's productive for us to be in control of everything. To work with projects around the world, to work with groups around the world, and with some of them to work quite closely and effectively. Maybe it would be Bitcoin X, but not always, right? That's kind of an optionality that people would have. So the idea is to learn from Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin is a global network that is decentralized. So to learn from Bitcoin itself, we consider Mi Primer Bitcoin El Salvador to be the Genesis block. And that Genesis block creates the consensus protocols, which is that education has to be independent, impartial, community-led, Bitcoin only, quality. So that's like helping teachers get started with teachers that are more experienced, and empowerment over profits, meaning that we are not teaching people that Bitcoin, we are teaching Bitcoin as a tool to have agency in your life. We want to empower people, we are not focused on trading to make profit, to have more dollars. Like, that is
Yeah.
not what we are doing. I think that misses the point. That is not the revolution. That is something else. That's the old world. That's the old system. Um, it's great if you make some money off Bitcoin, but that is not the point. That is not the real potential here. The potential isn't to change who wields power, it's to change our relationship with power, right? And trade-in changes who has power. It doesn't change what is power. So yeah, so that's the consensus rules that have been created by the Genesis block. And in order to join the network, to be a light node, it's just agreeing to that. It's having a minimum threshold of quality, and it's agreeing to the consensus of the network, minimum amount of students, and then to be a full node, to incorporate more fully. There's some more responsibility, and there's some more opportunity, right? It's to share, it's to share some policies about transparency and fundraising and all those things, which light nodes don't have those obligations. They just
Got it. And the light node versus full node, is that still within the realm of Mi Primer Bitcoin X, or is that just a general? Is
it
that for
depends.
everyone?
So there, again, this is new, right?
Yeah.
This is a living organism
Yeah.
that will evolve in ways that we can't imagine. So I imagine it will be both, though, that there will be Mi Primer Bitcoin X, and it will also be, just a different name, but that affiliates with this philosophy and supports this network. And the different nodes will be able to communicate with each other, to share. I mean, a big part of this is to speed up the timeline. Bitcoin will win. What we get to decide is the how and the when. So the how, we want to really push forward the notion, for example, empowerment over profits, right? That's part of how it wins. But in addition to that, it matters when Bitcoin wins. I don't think we have the luxury to wait.
No, absolutely not. Just
decades. We have to win
to think that
years.
Bitcoin is like is inevitable. You're right. It may be, but we have a lot to lose, or to not lose, based on the timeline of that event.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we hope to speed up the timeline by open sourcing everything, open sourcing processes, internal processes, fundraising, everything eventually, and making it easier for people to get started. And then those other people, they find what works better for them. And then because of that better communication, then best practices are, they're shared around the network and around the world faster, and it speeds up the timeline from when we win.
Beautiful. So I understand that you guys are super focused on the community, and I think that is so powerful, and I think that is most certainly the way to go as it sort of emerges as a grassroots thing. But I'm curious to hear if you guys have thought at all about taking a different approach and thinking about it from how can we make this available to people everywhere online? I don't know if you guys have thought about that as an option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. There's trade-offs. There's a connection. So I am not a teacher, but I have the honor of witnessing the connection that some teachers have with their students, and it's really wonderful
Special.
to see. And that's not something that translates easily to online. So there is something that we lose, but it's more scalable, right? You could reach a lot more people. So yes, that is something, and we do have online classes already. And this is a great thing about open source is there's, I don't know if you know them, but Nikki and James, they're a couple from
yes,
that moved to El Salvador.
Yeah. I know them. They have a project on Geyser as well.
Yeah, they have a podcast.
Right.
and they actually have started doing, I think I don't know what week they're in now, but like literally days after we released the English version in open source. And this was without coordination, right? Like we didn't know they were going to do this. We weren't like planning it. Totally on their own. They took the initiative, and they are teaching it weekly online on their own. So it's like already happening, right? And we're actually using the feedback from that to help us and to help them. I presume they'll probably do it again. But we're using that feedback to iterate, and we'll do it better next time. So yeah, we are in the early stages of a couple of different of ourselves working on translating some of the stuff into an online environment. And in addition to that, other people are also already doing it all on their own.
Incredible. Oh. Wow. So bullish, of this project. So right, so was it 250,000? Maybe we'll do another one of these in a year. We see where we're at. How about that?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I want to make sure to give a shout out to our current campaign on Geyser.
Yeah.
We are growing so fast, and we have some really great sponsors and donors. But we have a lot of good problems. One of those good problems that we have is we're actually growing faster than our super ambitious projections. And that means that we need to build out that infrastructure faster. We need to hire more teachers. We need to bring more people into the Bitcoin economy and the SAT standard. We only use Bitcoin, so we use Bitcoin in our classes. All of our teachers are paid in Bitcoin. All of our expenses are paid in Bitcoin. And because we're growing so fast, we need more of it, right? We need more to continue that momentum and that growth. And we'd love to connect with the community, which is why we love crowdfunding on Geyser so much, because it's a very the model that we have is much less like a business and much more like a movement. And it's not just a few of us in San Salvador. It's thousands of us around the world that are part of this. And Geyser, this Geyser campaign is like a great way to express that in a tangible nature, right? Like every sat counts. We're raising 2 Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin for our expenses in April and 1 for our expenses in May. And actually on the Geyser campaign, there's a link to a spreadsheet that breaks down where all of the sats will go, where what all our budget costs are. And yeah, we I believe that will be a record for Geyser when we complete that. We had a great day last Monday where we raised 65 million sats, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the highest one-day total ever on Geyser.
Yeah, most definitely. I think you had the highest per week, and I think you're probably the highest ever received in a single month so far for April. So that's really, really impressive. And 165 individual donations. I mean, exactly like you said. And yeah, with Geyser, we you said it's spot on. We want to really bring the community to life, so you can see each single transaction. You can add a comment. You can become a part and feel a part of that movement. So
yeah, exactly. So today, I really want to encourage people to participate. This gives us so much fuel, and it doesn't, you don't have to be a whale to participate, to contribute. It really encourages us, that the number, would you say 165 is what it's at? By the end of the day, today, Thursday, April 27th, our goal is to have more than 1 Bitcoin raised for the month. I think we're at, I don't know what, since the podcast started, but it was like 65 million. and like 100.
We're at 66 million now.
Oh, cool. That's a million since this podcast started. And to break a Bitcoin for the month, and to have more than 200. Let's go more than 210, right? Individual donors for the campaign. And we only launched this like less than 2 weeks ago. So
Impressive. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And that's I think one of the things that I love about Bitcoin is it changes the dynamics. It's a real paradigm shift in a number of ways. And one of that is, in the legacy world, we compete against each other, and it's a zero-sum game. In Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin helps me as an individual doesn't mean you have to lose. It actually helps us. It serves a purpose for different people in different ways, right? Like a miner is doing what's best for him, but it helps the holder. The holder is doing what's best for her, but it helps the spender, right? Like it's this really wonderful system that encourages collaboration rather than competition. And that is the world that I want to live in, right? That is the world that we are going to build, one in which we don't compete to hold others down, but we collaborate to push others up. And I know that the community that supports us, I don't know. I'm always so inspired to meet the people that donate and contribute and support in their own way, whatever that is, because that's what this is about. It's about empowering people to make a difference in the future.
Totally. We're all making the pie bigger. And even if you are fiat mining, right, you have a normal job, just fiat mining, you can still contribute, right? You can still send sats towards Mi Primer Bitcoin. You can still send sats towards all the great projects that are out there, and be part of this change, be part of this revolution, and just by sending value to where value is needed, and value actually has an impact in a positive way. So yeah, we can all contribute. So yeah, if you're listening, just get out there, go to Mi Primer Bitcoin. I think the project is called Mi Primer Bitcoin 2023 expansion. They've got 66.5 million sats right now. 8 days to go to achieve the Bitcoin, and then probably a little bit more time to go to achieve the 2 Bitcoin. But we are really confident this is going to happen, because it's if not the single, it's one of the most important projects out there when it comes to Bitcoin education. And you heard John, 200, was it 2 million? Was it 2 million something by next year? Wait, no, 200.
By the end of this year, 250,000 students.
Okay.
We hope to impact, and by the end of next year, 6 million.
Incredible, and with incredibly well-crafted, community-based, quality education. So yeah, super bullish. Let's do this again soon, and you can kind of update us on all the updates. But yeah, John, any other kind of final points, or do you want anywhere else where people can find you? Maybe they want to help you not just through money, they want to help you in some other ways. Are there other channels?
Yes. So we are always growing, right? And that means that we always need more resources. And like what we're doing with this crowdfund campaign, that's financial resources, right? But we need human resources too. We need, it's not just sats. We need your intelligence, your enthusiasm, your skill set, whatever that is. Like, we are building a movement that will change the world, and that is a massive, massive project that needs help wherever it could get it. So that could be graphic design. It could be, maybe you're a lawyer that wants to give us some pro bono work. It could be so many different things. Everyone can contribute to this in their own way. So you could reach out to us. Probably the best way is just on Twitter. People could DM us on Twitter. Our DMs are open, and then we'll find the best route for you. DM us with what you can contribute, not just to ask us, but to offer what you have.
Right. At my first Bitcoin on Twitter, right?
Yes, on Twitter, also on Instagram, and maybe another social media. But yeah, it's my first Bitcoin _ So I don't know if this comes across in what people see, but my name here in the parentheses is our Twitter handle, my first Bitcoin _
Yeah, people can definitely see it. So I can add it here as well. My first Bitcoin. Yeah.
With an underscore at the end too, but yeah.
Oh, the underscore. Okay. Damn. All right. Well, it's been great. It's been fantastic, super fun, and super insightful, John, to hear from you today. And let's absolutely do it again. Really curious to hear how this expansion grows.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you in El Salvador.
See you in El Salvador.
Bye.